Hello, hello, and happy Monday, deities. Hope everyone is having a great start to the week. Welcome to another edition of Titan Talk. Isiah here, Killgoon here as usual, and we bring it back Lermy. And you know what happens when Lermy is here?
It's Lermy's balance bit.
So yeah, we're going to be talking about all the balance that's headed your way in closed Alpha 6, which I believe we're shooting for tomorrow.
Tomorrow morning, I believe, is the current target. We're trying to get a final build locked today still. Make sure that everything looks good, but still shooting for tomorrow morning. So fingers crossed you'll all wake up to CA6 with some new gods and a lot of balance.
A lot of balance. Yeah, I was looking at patch notes and I was like, man, I'm scrolling a lot here on my scroll wheel.
There's a lot of good stuff in there.
A lot of good stuff for sure. And we don't really have anything to recap because we didn't have any patches over the weekend because we're, working hard on closed Alpha 6. So
yeah, and that's pretty normal. As we get closer to the next update, we're going to push fewer updates to live because we're working on the next big update getting finalized.
Yeah. All right. Well, patch notes are live now on SMITE2.com. I'm going to pull up the handy dandy laptop. Chat, if you're at your PC, if you want to pull up patch notes on your phone to follow along with us, you're more than welcome to. But we're going to spend the first part of the show just going through patch notes and talking about all the cool stuff that's headed your way tomorrow. So scrolling down here, we will just get to some general changes to kind of kick things off on the UI side. For auto build up first, there's a new setting in usability to toggle auto build on. So this will give you the SMITE 2 experience that you're used to where at the beginning of the match you'll get the pop up to where you can select your auto build and your relics or manual build. But if you turn this off, this pop-up will no longer be there. So if you're a pro and you're just manual building all the time,
manual build every game.
Yes,
hallelujah.
So you can get rid of that pop-up and just go manual build. And there's also a new setting. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself here. But there's a new auto open shop manual build setting to where it will automatically pop open the shop if you're on manual build to just save your eye key a little bit.
Yeah, this was one of those like dumb little improvements that we thought of when we were talking about it. We're like, why not just open the shop? You're going to have to open the shop. There's never a time when it's not the correct move to open the shop at the start of a game of Smite. So we should just open it for you. So now you have the option to do that. If you don't want to do that, you can have it start closed. But I would recommend just starting it open. Why not?
Right. Nice and easy.
Play around with it. But if it messes with your muscle memory, you can turn it off and you can press I to open the shop at the beginning of the match. For the console item store, we added a new active items tab to better help you sort and find those active items on console.
Yeah, this was, I actually was the one who asked for this personally because I was playing on console and I was trying to find a specific active item and it was just taking me too long to find it. And I was like, could we just add another tab that has all the active items on it? Same way we have a glyphs tab in Smite 1. And they were able to get it in pretty quickly. There's another feature, I guess, which is the next one, which I'll talk about as well. Scroll back up. So you see these little like bolt icons in the bottom corner of the item. On both console and on PC now, all active items are going to be flagged with that little lightning bolt icon. So it should be much easier as you're scrolling through to find what is an active item, what isn't an active item. So it's a small thing, but it's made a huge like efficiency change for myself as I'm navigating the store trying to find something.
Yeah, it is nice to go, I've got 2 active items, but which one could I get for my third? And just be able to pop through all of them. It's real nice to just have it at a glance.
Yep. All right, so we talked about the bolt icon in the shop for calling out active items. We talked about this last week on the show, and some of you who were able to hop in the flash test saw this in person, but on the gods page, we now have little card arts for gods that are coming soon with the date that they are tentatively scheduled for.
It's so exciting.
I know, it's awesome.
We were talking about it internally today, like, should we just put all of the, or I guess it was yesterday, or maybe Friday, but we were like, should we put all the 50 gods on here? And we were like, we'll probably just do the next patch, just so it's not overwhelming with the stuff that isn't here, but definitely good to let people know what's coming next.
Yeah.
All right, moving right along. On the God overview page, it's getting a little bit of a cosmetic lift here. Changed the background on that a little bit. It's a lot lighter than it was. And then we've also added a new overview page where it has some of the God lore text there. It's got some of the gameplay tags to give you an idea of how the God plays at a glance. We've got Khepri up here, and of course, you've got your magical int scaling and melee, tank and lockdown. But also, I love the idea of just a short sentence of what the God does at a glance. Khepri's is resurrects allies, pulls enemies into his grasp.
Yeah, I actually wrote most of these.
Nice.
So I'm glad you like them. I really like the idea of, in a nutshell, what does a god do? I think it's really important for new players, and I'm glad that we're like surfacing it in a lot of places. We also brought lore back, which is great.
Yep.
You know, I will say, you know, we changed the backgrounds a little bit lighter here. We are continuing to work on a bigger overhaul to the backgrounds for all of these screens.
Right.
So it's going to look much better in the next month or two. You know, I don't know exactly how long it's going to take to wrap up, but yeah, this screen, I think, like, shows off all the information really well, but sometimes the models don't look as great just because of the background, making them not look as good. So we're working on that.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, and then last up under general/UI improvements, ranked draft lobby, we added which team and which player is banning and picking in the upper left corner of the Godlike lobby, just for better clarity when you're doing those picks and bans. And then we also fixed some text overlap issues during the pick and ban phases.
I think we also changed the timing on this.
Yes, we did have a conversation about this. I'm not sure if it went live yet, but the plan was to change the time. I believe right now each player has 60 seconds.
Yeah, it's way too long
to take an action, and I believe we're bringing that down to 30 just to kind of make that pick ban phase a little bit shorter, get you into game quicker.
Yeah, and if it turns out that's not too long, we can pretty easily change it to 40 or something. But it's just, we got a lot of feedback from people that play a lot of ranked that they're just wasting a lot of time in picks and bans. Right. So I'm trying to speed that up.
Or they're alt tabbed or something like that.
Yep.
That's just ranked though.
That's just ranked. That's just the ranked experience. All right, moving on to gameplay stuff. Let's talk about Conquest changes up first. And the Gold Fury specifically, we can kick things off with. We increased the base movement speed of the Gold Fury, and we also added some anti-body block mechanics to this, just because we've seen some stuff. Players have been cooking, you know. The best way to optimally take an objective may not be kind of what our vision is for the Gold Fury. So basically, going forward in closed Alpha 6, if the Gold Fury is in range of her target, she will use her normal attack. If the Gold Fury is out of range of her target, but there are enemies in the way, she will attack all of them with a cleave.
Sheesh.
And her movement speed must be slightly lower for base for this to trigger.
Yeah, just very important to make sure that, you know, when we're doing objectives, we're not cheesing them, you know, not doing any little things. I mean, of course, we are on the alpha, so we're trying to get some of these things out of the way, get the jitters all worked through with some of the AI of the objectives as well. So that's just one piece of the puzzle for Gold Fury in particular.
All right, next up for Conquest objectives, Warhorn. We fixed the in the pit effect not removing properly from players, and we fixed the in the pit effect granting the wrong amount of damage reduction. So basically now the Warhorn where the totem is, if you're in the pit, you take reduced damage from sources outside of the pit. There were some issues with that are just getting fixed up now.
Yep.
Yeah, and there were a couple clips that were sent over to us in the Ambassador Discord. I think Haddock sent a few of them that we were like trying to diagnose. And he was like, feels like somebody died either way too quickly or not quickly enough in all of these clips. And we noticed that it seemed like it was mostly tied to this. Like this buff was either persisting when it shouldn't have or not applying when it should have, kind of thing. So hopefully it makes solo lane feel a lot more predictable in terms of time to kill.
Cool. All right, moving on to gods. We already went over the new gods last week in our show. We've, of course, got Izanami, Nemesis, and Khepri coming out in closed Alpha 6. If you missed our Titan Talk last week where we went in game and showed off those characters with AJ, we've got you know, just the deets on all the different abilities for Izanami, Khepri, and Nemesis for you all to go through.
And the new features are highlighted.
The new
so
features
if you're just
are
looking for
highlighted,
new stuff, look for those bold lines of text.
Control F new feature and you'll get them all.
You will be able to find all of the things that are new from.
All right, I'm going to scroll through here and get us into God Balance. Lermy, do you want to do any sort of kickoff for God Balance specifically? I know items is a lot, but you've got notes.
Pull it up real quick. So we did a pretty big pass this time around because I know there's a lot of discussion amongst the community about certain particular roles and balance around those guys. And usually those end up being the strength scalers in general. So I kind of want to give the TLDR of what we're looking at here. All right.
I'm going to go full cam for this.
Yeah. So
that way I get a good clip for after the show to post on social media.
So what we got here in terms of general balances, we got a lot of buffs for underperformers / just gods you haven't seen in the role for a hot minute. Got nerfs to specifically Baron, Sobek, and Zeus. As I'm sure you guys know, those are the guys that have been top of the top thus far. We've got big recipe cost quality of life adjustments for some recipes that were building off of a single component. So think like your Soul Reavers, your Tekokagis, and your Gem of Focus is another one that comes up very often. Hunter items. across the board, well, shouldn't say entirely across the board, but in several places are getting cost reductions so that they can get them online a little bit easier, have their curve be a little bit better. Whereas we're mostly focusing on strength buffs for assassin items. There is some overlap between assassin items and hunter items, so you could see them in either place. But for the most part, if it's a hunter item, it's getting mostly a cost reduction unless it was a really not good item, not getting bought a lot. And for a lot of assassin items, they're getting strength increases. Beyond that, we're also seeing prophetic and lifebinder buffs and a Pharaoh's Curse nerf. But we'll get into what those are in a little bit, but that is your TLDR of the balance bit.
Nice. All right, I'm going to bring up the laptop. All right, first up, let's talk about on her, on the god stuff. So Enfeeble updated the description to show the proper amount of protection reduction, but Desert Fury, we're going to be increasing the damage per tick and the final damage on this one.
Yeah, a lot of actually very interesting things here for On Her is that On Her was showing 10 flat protection. Actually, it's 20. So it was not showing the right amount, but it actually was doing the 20 the whole time. And we looked at that, we were like, oh, that's pretty good. It's
pretty good.
We'll go a little light on Her in terms of buffs. But one thing that has been pretty consistent for On Her is that his ultimate feels a little bit lackluster in certain points of the game. So we wanted to actually bring it up a lot for that final hit to really make sure you're slamming in that final bit of damage. And beyond that, we also want to make sure that even in the early game, you're feeling like all your shots are being rewarded adequately.
Yeah. Do the first ticks not have any scaling? It's just the flat damage?
They do.
Okay.
They do have scaling. Yeah, we only increased the damage and not the damage scaling.
All right, up next, Baron Samedi, getting a nerf. He's partying too hard.
Yes.
Life of the party. Decreasing the vortex strength, the hysteria vortex strength, and decreasing the health scaling.
Yes, so Life of the Party has definitely been the discussion of the party, if you will.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of how this ability should be nerfed. One thing that we should talk about first is that I've seen a lot of talk about this ability should get a duration nerf. It's kind of difficult to do a duration nerf specifically with this ability because there's so much built into moving between the states of the abilities and transitioning from, are you closing the coffin early? Are you canceling it? Doing things like that, where it just made the duration change really tricky. That was initially what we wanted to do because, again, we're trying to listen to feedback. And, of course, a lot of players are also used to how that feels and how long they're able to stay in that. So it just seemed like the more and more that we looked into that solution, it didn't feel amazing. So what we're doing instead is we understand that the vortex happens for a really long time and it gets really strong. So the initial vortex is going down by 10%. And honestly, that's pretty significant considering. So the vortex will be significantly weaker, and then because it applies hysteria so quickly, and I mean Baron has got a lot of abilities up so quickly, we wanted to make sure to hit the upgraded vortex harder because that just happens pretty quickly unless you get out of it really fast. So 20% on that one does bring it down a pretty significant margin. And then also because health did get changed in previous patches to go up, we wanted to bring the percent health scaling down as well on specifically the tankier Barons because that is the general build that Barons are going. We didn't want to punish the mage Barons.
Cool. All right, next up, let's talk about Chalk here. Couple buffs for Chalk. Thunderstrike, going to be decreasing the cooldown. And then Rain Dance, we're going to be increasing the heal per tick and decreasing the cooldown for Chalk.
Yeah, exactly. So Chalk has not seen very much success since a lot of the more, I guess you could say, staple Smite 1 soul laners have been introduced, like your Herculeses, your Amas. Poor Chalk has just been kind of pushed out of the meta. So we want to make sure that he's feeling relevant in terms of, the people that he needs to go up against. I know especially when it comes down to the totem pole of the best soul laners, he's definitely not up there, even in the stats. And usually in Smite 1, he would perform generally okay stats-wise because he's a simple character, He has a bunch of circles.
Yep.
Circles are good.
We
circles
love
are
circles.
fun.
Yep.
However, he's
Big
performing...
circles hit people.
Yep.
That is true. That is true. So we're trying to give him a little bit more clear, a little bit more ability to kind of decide between whether he goes for Torrent or Rain Dance with more Thunderstrikes, because you can enhance those abilities when you've got more axes, more cool interactions with those abilities, and then, of course, a little bit of extra sustain. Never hurt anybody.
Never hurt anybody. All right, moving on to Don Zaburo. He's been struggling a little bit since his introduction into Smite 2. So he's going to be seeing a round of buffs here. Fool's Gold, increasing the damage scaling. Tanuki Trickery, going to be decreasing the cooldown. And then Uproarious Rocket, the ultimate, we're going to be adjusting the damage scaling from 85 strength, 85 int to 100 strength, 70 int. And the explosion damage scaling from 60 strength and int to 50 strength, 80 int.
Yeah, so this is a bunch of changes to kind of a variety of things here for Danza. One of the reasons why I wanted to go hard on this Danza buff is that he's yet to see a lot of high-level success at this point. So we want to make sure that he has a lot of options to kind of actually push further in that direction. The Fool's Gold and Tanuki Trickery are just straight up like buffs across everything. Uproarious Rocket had a bit of a shift between where its power level lies, but overall it's still a buff, mostly to feel like you're playing a slightly different character when you're going Strength Danza versus when you're going Int Danza. Int Danza will be better at doing a lot of damage in an area, whereas if you're focusing on a single target, the strength is going to be packing a punch. I mean, 100% scaling is kind of crazy, guys. Pretty good.
Kind of good. All right, moving on to Hercules is a buff, and I believe this is actually a revert for Driving Strike and Earthbreaker. We're going to be decreasing the cooldown on both of those abilities by a second.
Yeah, it's a partial revert. They were at 12 seconds initially, so we're bringing it back just a little bit because we know the community perception on Herc is still a little bit dicey. Some people think he was overnerfed. Some people think he's still super, super OP. But our stats have been telling us that he's not performing super well compared to a lot of the other soul laners, but he is still visible. You know, a lot of people still want to play him because Hercules, I mean, he's just
iconic.
a classic.
Yeah,
he's just the soul lane guy.
I think we very frequently see when we release a god and they're either really strong or really weak, the community perception of them at that level takes a long time to come back to the reality of what they are, right? It's like, I think it took us like 3 months before people thought Cabrakan wasn't just unplayably bad when he was released, right? And similarly, like a lot of people still have, you know, horrific memories of the first few days of Hercules when he was just unkillable and deleting you in a single ability, you know? But the facts are he's just not doing that anymore, even if you remember that. Right. So this should be just a nice little tweak in the right direction.
Small buff.
Just a small adjustment.
Yeah.
You know?
So it'll be nice for your lane clear, your combos, you know, just being able to do more things. They won't hurt more, but you'll be able to have more options to use them. And so we're hoping that this still feels significant enough to move the needle a little bit without actually giving him so much that it feels like he's back to that day one position of being really, really strong.
All right, next up we've got New Wa. Seeing a couple buffs here. Strength of Wood, going to be decreasing the cooldown from 15 seconds to 12 seconds.
What is Strength of Wood? Is that her passive?
That is
that's
the
her
passive.
passive.
Oh, okay.
So that's the time it takes for her to get that enhanced basic attack.
Yeah.
And then Shining Metal, increasing the damage scaling from 55% into 65% and decreasing the cooldown by a second.
Yeah, so the Strength of Wood is a buff that has not been done before, but the Shining Metal is a slight revert to what it was before. It was previously 9 seconds, moved it up to 11 to kind of get those new reactions when she was super OP, you know, super
really
strong.
Good. Yeah.
Bring it back down in the middle somewhat, and we still want to reward those really good Nuwa players that are consistently hitting that Shining Metal, and we want to make sure that we're still being able to see her. She's a very popular god, but she was performing just okay. Not great, not awful, but, you know, we want to see more variety. We've been seeing a lot of Zeus, a lot of Anubis. Instead of nerfing those guys really extremely, which, I mean, we do have a Zeus nerf coming up. Don't you worry, got you. We want to bring other gods up as well to get closer to that level.
Right. All right, speaking of the mid lane, we've got another mid laner coming up with a buff, Ra. A Celestial Beam, we adjusted this ability's range to better match the visual. We got some feedback on that to where it just didn't feel right. And then Searing Pain, we increased the damage on the ultimate ability from 400 scaling up to 700 to 425 to 725.
Yeah, we did not want to go too crazy on Ra. But I think the more important fix here just visually is that change to Celestial Beam, because it was really giving some mismatched feedback.
Yeah.
Because the projectile, I actually looked into this myself, so I can tell you exactly what happened here. The projectile was offset by about 70 centimeters in the game, and that doesn't seem like a lot. 70 centimeters does not seem like a lot, but actually it is a lot. So the beam would look like it's going through the target, but it's actually not hitting them.
Right.
So what we did was we adjusted the beam to actually match that, so now it's perfectly hitting the target again. Shout outs to Chuck, by the way, for being an absolute goat and taking a look at that one over the weekend so we could get it in for this patch. Thank you again to Chuck. That was awesome. But a little bit of extra damage. Ra's doing better than Nuwa at this point. He's also a little bit, you know, along the same lines of popularity. I mean, Ra's like goat character.
Yep, goat.
So he does stay popular, but not quite receiving the same fanfare that some of our other mage releases did when they came out. So I want to make sure he's just getting a little bit of extra love.
Just a tad bit.
Just a little bit.
All right, chat, I know you've been asking for it. Here's your Sobek nerf. Charge Prey, increasing the cooldown from 12 to 14 seconds.
Yep, this has been kind of another piece of feedback that we've gotten a lot is that we did change the 3 to have reduced or adjusted the reducing cooldown method of it to only be on gods, and that kind of solved that ability.
Right.
But we didn't solve the charge prey one. And now we're kind of getting to that now to see like, okay, yeah, Sobek still is maintaining even after that really big change to his 3, and we still think that he needs more nerfs.
Yep.
So this is the direction that we're going for it. If we need more, we'll do more as well. You know, this is not the only patch ever again in Smite 2. So, you know, if we haven't hit enough there, we'll keep doing it. And yeah, we'll keep an eye out on Sobek, see how he changes. But again, we're trying to kind of maintain that philosophy that we don't want to over nerf too hard. We want to bring other gods up. So you'll see a couple more other buffs in that regard.
All right. Moving on, we've got buffs for Soul up next. Stellar Burst, we're going to be increasing the slow. And then Supernova, decreasing the cooldown from 90 down to 70 seconds at max rank.
Yeah, Soul is a character that can really benefit from hybrid builds across the board, and that does make her a flexible character in a lot of ways. She does have more int scaling than strength scaling, so it's a little bit like a Zeus moment where, like, you can go strength, but it's better to go hybrid or full int. Yeah. So we wanted to give her some other tools to kind of work around whatever she's doing regardless of her build. So the first thing that we're doing is Stellar Burst, giving her a little bit more of that early game presence to be able to actually combo with herself a little bit better. We're not actually increasing the slow at the top end. We're just giving you a little bit more of that early game pressure to be able to do something more with it. And then, of course, Supernova is great to get that extra damage off if you're looking for a finisher. If you need some quick CC immunity to get a pinch, that's going to help you out as well. So across the board, nice little couple of buffs for Soul, not having to do specifically with her damage.
Right. All right, moving along here, we've got Thanatos up next. Harvester of Souls, we're going to be increasing the God Kill Heal from 15% to 20% of their max health. Scent of Death, we're going to be increasing the flat pen on the ability. And then Soul Reap, we're going to be decreasing the cooldown from 14 seconds to 14 at level 1 down to 12 seconds at max rank.
Yeah, Thanatos still kind of lacking compared to a lot of other junglers. Like you would probably pick Fenrir, Loki, Susano, even Mordred in some cases over Thanatos. So we're trying to give those really good Thanatos players a place to shine because he usually does well in lower level lobbies. And that's not an offense against anybody. That's just where the data lies. So we want to try to give specifically more points that the higher level players will use as interaction points that they specifically look at to say, ooh, okay, if I get this kill, I get 20% of my health back, and so I'm going to be able to keep going in. Or, ooh, okay, if I do the pen first, and then I do my Soul Reaper, I do this and I do that. That's what we want to look at more so than just pump more damage into him, because that's going to affect everybody. We want to make sure that the higher level players where he's performing worse are getting a little bit more of that interaction point to be able to use and work around.
Fun Thanatos fact. In Smite 1, he is the most commonly purchased god for new players with favor.
Cool.
He's cool.
By like a lot. So not only like is he good at low levels with new players, he also just looks cool and people love him.
Yeah.
So
all right. Next up,
cool.
Yamoja. Getting a buff here. Moonstrike, we're going to be increasing the damage. And then Mending Waters, we're going to be adjusting the health scaling from 15% to 5% max health.
Yeah, so Yamoja is an interesting character, as I'm sure many people who have paid attention to balance in the past may know. She does not perform very well, but she has such a high potential that it is very difficult to do a whole lot with her to even out that kind of discrepancy. However, one thing that we want to do here is, for specifically Moonstrike, this is the damage only on the outer rings, not the inner rings. So if you are specifically hitting that inner ring and you're not missing, damage exactly the same. It's only for these outer rings going in for Moonstrike specifically. And then Mending Waters, of course, it just felt a little weird that she had int scaling on her heal when she's not really building all that much int. But building health makes a little bit more sense for a tanky lady like herself.
Nice. All right. And then last but not least, Lermy promised you all a Zeus nerf. So here is the Zeus nerf. Detonate Charge, we're going to be decreasing the damage on that ability from 50 to 170 plus 30% int to 50 to 150 plus 25% int.
Yes, so big Zeus nerf across the board. Detonate Charge is kind of your finisher. It's what does a lot of damage. And even though, my friends, it looks a little scary because it's only 5%. That 5% gets multiplied across the the detonate multiplier, which I believe goes up to 2.4. So essentially take your 25, multiply it by 2.4 when you've got full stacks, and that's kind of the damage that you're doing. So I want to make sure that that finisher is what's getting hit there as well. We did previously nerf a lot on the 1 as well, so we're trying to spread out the nerfs again. I know we've seen a lot in chat that the 1 is the problem. We've definitely talked about that. We're trying to spread it out and make sure that we're not just repeatedly hitting the same ability over and over again. We'll see as well if Zeus gets dethroned a bit by a lot of the other characters that have gotten buffs here, and we'll be talking about item buffs and nerfs as well. So keep your opinions open as we continue to go through, and if we need to nerf him again, we'll nerf him again.
Yep, definitely.
And I think just in general, right, like our approach right now is less like let's just hit people with a huge nerf stick, right? It's more like how do we buff other characters to make them relevant and then nerf where it makes sense, right? I think that like if we just get into the world where we're only nerfing things, then it just feels bad.
Feels bad.
Right?
Yeah.
So we want to kind of be doing a mix where it's like, okay, we're trying to bring up the underperformers and trying to bring down the overperformers just a little bit.
Right. All right. Next up, items. We got a lot of text here, Lermy. Lots of stuff to talk about for items. So I will get into it. First up, we have a new tier 1 and a new tier 2 in the form of Reliquary and Soul Reliquary. Lermy, you want to give us what the details are on these?
Yeah, so TLDR, we were trying to find some solutions to work around the Soul Reaver problem, which is Soul Reaver, 3,000 gold, was building only from Oracle Staff, and that was a humongous upgrade. The problem is that we ran out of recipes. We didn't have enough components that made sense to go with Soul Reaver that actually worked, unless we were bringing back the pen, which we didn't want to do. That was totally against one of the objectives of our previous patch, was to kind of remove how spread out pen was. So we were looking for another option, and we said, well, we don't really have a really simple component of just mana regen.
Right.
So we made a tier 1 Reliquary. You may remember that for those of you that
OGs,
have some Smite 1 knowledge from those OG days. But yeah, Reliquary and Soul Reliquary are both going to be mana regen items. Soul Reliquary does get a bit of int as well, which is nice. And so Soul Reaver is now going to be building from just Oracle Staff to Oracle Staff plus Soul Reliquary. So that curve is going to feel so much better. Nicer.
Yeah.
So much nicer. We totally understand, by the way, that the cost on Reliquary and Soul Reliquary is a little bit high, considering just how much of the stats are focused on mana regen. It's something that we are looking to adjust maybe in the future. It was just for the short term, we wanted to... The most important thing for us was to adjust this recipe cost to make sure that we weren't spending 1,900, 2,100 gold going back to the base every single time you wanted to buy this item.
Yeah, I think the other thing is like, it's an interesting balance that we're trying to get here, right? Whereas it's like, if there isn't some jump in the purchasing costs and some jump in the power, then you don't feel power spikes, right? But if it's too much, then it feels awful because you have to sit around and wait for a lot of gold, right? So it's how do we create the right like break points where it feels like you can spend money, you're getting a little bit stronger, but then you're getting a lot stronger when you get the finished item.
Right. All right.
Exactly.
And Lermy already mentioned it, but Soul Reaver, the recipe has been adjusted to build out of Oracle Staff plus Soul Reliquary. Also on Soul Reaver, we've increased the mana regen from 4 to 5.
Yep, exactly. And that's just to match the stats that Soul Reliquary is providing.
All right, next up, Gem of Focus. We adjusted the recipe from Ring of Dispel to Adriat Ring plus Killing Stone and increased the intelligence from 35 to 40.
Yeah, so Ring of Dispel is an item that has power, I should say, intelligence and cooldown. And that's both the things that we've got Gem of Focus providing, right? But the thing is that recipe made it very difficult because that was the only thing you were buying. And so, again, that price jump was really, really big. So to fix it, we pulled the power away from one of the tier 2s and then put a full power tier 2 on the other side of it. So you get cooldown and you get power. You put it together. What do you make? Gem of Focus.
There you go.
Yeah, so now it's a lot easier to buy into. And of course, because Killing Stone is 40 intelligence, you're going to be getting 40 intelligence on Gem of Focus now.
Yep. All right, next up, we've got Tekko Kage, another one of those items where the tier 2 component to the final item just felt like it was just way too much. So we adjusted the recipe on this to be from Castus or Cestus?
I think it's Cestus.
Cestus to Adriat Ring plus Skegox.
Yes. So this is another one. It's kind of the exact mirror if you think about it, because Tekko and Gem of Focus kind of do a very similar thing, and movement speed plus more of your desired strength or int. So they have a very similar recipe with the Droid Ring plus now it's Skegox, which is the pure strength tier 2. So that's so fun. They got mirrored recipes.
There you go.
Yeah, you like to see that.
All right, next up, we've got another recipe adjustment for Jotun's Revenge. We adjusted the recipe from Adriat Ring plus Skegox to Cestus plus Skegox.
Yeah, so this needed to happen for Tekko Kagi to change the way it did. Tekko Kagi could not have possibly been a Droid Ring plus Skegox unless Jotun's Revenge gave up that recipe, but it turns out that Cestus and Skegox just give you the same amount of stats that you would have been getting anyway, so easy little flipperoo. Shouldn't be too much of a difference there for Jotun's Revenge. Just a little bit of a different recipe in terms of what you're actually picking up, but you should still be getting to the same stats.
Right. All right, up next, we've got a buff to Bloodforge. We adjusted the recipe from Adamantine Sickle to Adamantine Sickle plus Manchubo, and we've added 15% attack speed.
Yes, so we had a very interesting discussion over in the balance, I guess, gang group? I don't know what you want to call it. The Balance Boys. Yeah, we'll call it that. About hunter items. And so one thing that I kind of wanted to point out here is that, number one, Bloodforge was a single item upgrade from Adamantine Sickle, so that was a bit difficult to want to get into. Secondly, I wanted to also provide more options for hunters to get a little bit of attack speed in their build if they wanted to. We've definitely been seeing that hunters and getting attack speed is not quite the same availability as in Smite 1, and that's generally our goal, is to lower it a little bit, but it turns out we lowered it a lot.
Yeah.
And that generally did not feel great across the board. So one of the things that we're doing here is by spreading out that cost by also going into Manchubo, it also means that you can get 15% attack speed on Bloodforge, which is great.
Yeah.
It also differentiates it from the Reaper a lot more, because I know there was some like, should I get the Reaper? Should I get Serrated Edge? Should I get XYZ? Now you have a little bit more of a dedicated attack speed lifesteal item if you want it. Or, up next, a little spoiler here.
Spoiler
You
alert.
can pick up Devo Gauntlets if you just want stacking lifesteal, because we're dropping that cost by 150.
Yep. Buff to Devo's Gauntlet as well. Moving on, we keep talking about hunter items here. Sunbeam Bow. Got a lot of stuff under here for Sunbeam Bow, getting a buff here. Adjusting the recipe from Manchubo plus Manatome to Manchubo plus Soul Reliquary. That's that near tier component.
Yeah.
We removed the mana, but increased the strength from 25 to 30. Added 25 int. Increased the mana regen from 3 to 5. And then increased the active damage scaling from 20% to 25%.
Yeah, Sunbeam Boys, rise up.
There we go,
It's
rise
time,
up.
It's time to get this item another try. I think it's really cool that this item can be a hybrid, kind of more ADC style item, which I think opens it up a lot. I think especially Soul Reliquary gives us that opportunity, because you don't really want more mana in an item that's draining your mana percentage per second. So the more mana you have, the more mana it drains. So it's not super convenient in that way. So not only are we pulling off the mana, but we're giving it some int, we're giving it some more regen, which is really helpful when you're draining your mana, get some back. And then we're also making those side projectiles a little bit stronger as well.
All right. Moving along, we've got a round of cost adjustments. Do we just want to group all these together and talk about them kind of as one?
Throw them in there.
All right. So Kin's Blade, Dagger of Frenzy, Demon Blade, Death Metal, all seeing decrease in costs here.
Yeah, just across the board, we wanted to make sure that ADCs were getting their power spikes on a little bit earlier, especially compared to mages who were having their item costs sit anywhere between like 23 to 25.50. It was like a very typical cost. And I mean, as you can see here, some of these items are getting up pretty high. I mean, Chin's was 27, Demon Blade 29, which is a little ridiculous if you ask me.
Yeah, very expensive.
And Death Metal, it gives a lot of really good stats, so it's understandable why it was so high. So I wanted to bring it down just a little bit. And then, of course, Dagger Frenzy is already pretty solid, but it is really expensive considering. So because it is already kind of good, we wanted to just bring it down to get that curve on a little bit faster, compete as well with some of those early lifesteal options.
All right, so that was the round of cost reduction for hunter items. Let's talk about some of the strength increases for the jungle slash assassin items here. So first up, got a big round of strength increases for Musashi's Dual Swords, Hydra's Lament, Transcendence, Heartseeker, the Crusher, and Avatar's Parashu, all getting power increases here.
Yeah, so Musashi's Dual Swords is a little bit more towards the ADC build, so we wanted to make sure we were still giving some love to crit builds. Crit builds have kind of been in and out of meta, right? Because Jingwei is still really good, so you do see some crit kind of splashed in here or there. And across the board, we wanted to make sure that junglers, they were feeling good. They were feeling like they had some solid options and didn't have to go tank to feel like they could feel relevant. You guys can do damage and feel okay about it. So across the board, Transcendence also can be useful on a lot of specific ADCs. I know we've got some more ability ADCs coming, but right now we've got Neath as a really solid option, but Medusa in the near future, you know, probably will be used in Transcendence.
That's true.
And then, of course, Heartseeker and Crusher are not receiving any specific strength increases to themselves because they scale with a lot of other strength, and if you're building extra strength through this build, you're going to get even stronger. Avatar's Parachute, just super underbought.
Yep.
This one is the one that boosts your strength by high amount.
You get big whenever you
Yeah,
pop
you also
it.
get big. That's super fun. So we want to make sure that if you are buying this item, you are really feeling that payoff of, I get an absolute crap ton of strength when I buy this. So 75 is a lot. Well, keep an eye on that one specifically. I see a lot of 75. Whoa. But yeah, that one was definitely underbought. So you want to see people go for it a little more now.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, moving along. We've got Pendulum Blade up next. We've got a cost reduction in this one for minus 100 gold in CA6.
Yeah, so Pendulum Blade is a kind of scary item. It's so good.
A little bit, yeah.
Just really expensive is the problem.
It's
so
great,
it's hard
though.
to.
It's a really good item.
It's hard to want to opt into it just because it's one of the most expensive items in the game, and it does have that 3-second cooldown reduction on an active item. So you kind of like need to pick and choose like what you're going for here because that effect in the right situations on the right character can go a little crazy. I won't lie to you. So we're being a little bit more cautious with that one to go forward here, but hopefully people start picking it up and start seeing just how strong that effect can be.
All right, next up we've got Titan's Bane, increasing the strength from 40 to 45 on Titan's Bane.
Yeah, in general, Titan's Bane is kind of the catch-all. If I do ability damage that's physical, I want this item. We also recently changed it to have the shattering effect, which means that it's not going to stack with Obsidian Shard, and we kind of saw the popularity of it kind of down. So we wanted to make sure that Titan's Bane could stand on its own 2 feet, as much of a 2 feet as a hammer can have, but you know, just a little bit of extra power.
Just a tad bit.
Just a little bit.
All right, Prophetic Cloak up next, getting a buff, decreasing the stack cooldown from 8 seconds to 5 seconds, so you can stack a little bit quicker.
So we had a bit of a discussion around the last change to Prophetic Cloak where we increased the stack count, and overall we still feel like more stacks is the right way to go with it, but we want to make sure that we're really rewarding those players that are getting active often and getting active early. We want to really encourage this item to be very good on supports that are trying to fight you all the time. They want to get in your face, they want to get those stacks and get tankier. So this is kind of why we went in this direction and not completely reverting the stack count, because I know there was a lot of talk of, why make it 20? That slows it down a lot. Well, if you're getting active, it's going to be faster than ever before.
Yep. All right,
and that, like, I like items that give you these kind of mini quests.
Right, yeah.
That's
great.
Like, I play a lot of support, and I love stacking my prophetic, right? Like, it's fun to go out and get those stacks, and now I can do it more often.
Get active out there in lane,
Exactly,
you know?
exactly.
All right, next up on the list, Pharaoh's Curse going to be seeing a nerf here. We're going to be increasing the active cooldown from 40 seconds to 60 seconds.
Yes, this item is good, it turns out. It was being bought on a lot of roles across the board this weekend in the LCQ, which was exciting to see, but at the same time, when you see 3 of them being bought in a team, you're like, maybe too much. So we're not trying to overly nerf the fun thing, right? Because having a lot of actives is really cool. It's really exciting. It's what makes SMITE 2. However, having multiple of these slow effects on a 40-second cooldown was a little bit crazy. Yeah. So we're trying to nudge it in a different direction to where you can still have that strong slow effect, but a little bit less often. If we need to bump it further, we'll bump it further. But yeah, we'll try to see if this 20 seconds affects it all too much. But if not, we'll keep going in that direction.
All right, keeping on with the active item change, Lifebinder up next, but getting a buff, decreasing the active cooldown from 50 seconds to 30 seconds.
Yes, so Lifebinder had some CDR in it before, and that made it really, really good for supports because it was just a really efficient item. And honestly, the active effect is really fun to be able to bounce around, pop a heal into somebody for your teammate to pick up, for you to pick up. So we want to kind of still stay away from spreading out cooldown too much across the board, but we want to have supports feel like they're able to get active and do things with their fights, because the least fun time when you're playing Smite is when you're just sitting around waiting for your cooldowns to come up with support. Don't worry, guys, I got taunt in 18 seconds. I got you. Well, don't worry, you got Lifebinder for times like that. So in general, we want to make sure that there is still a lot of options for support players to be able to do, and this is a really great item for that unfortunately lost a bit of popularity due to the pull away from cooldown. So we want to give a little bit of that back in some more active things for you to do with it.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about jungle starters. Lermy, I believe we talked about them last time you were here. AJ kind of spoiled the direction we were going last time he was on the show, but all the jungle starters going to be getting a change here. We're going to be removing the strength on all of them, and all of them now have a new effect, and they provide 15 strength or 20 intelligence depending on which stat is higher, just to encourage, you know, characters that are int focused being able to have that jungle starter and being able to have that be a little bit more successful in their role if they're deciding to go into the jungle.
Yeah, definitely. This was a huge change, by the way. I'm so excited to see what kinds of new jungles that we see playing over in that role. More Athenas, maybe. Jungle Sobek, maybe Nappa. You know, we'll see. I do think that it just allows a lot more flexibility for whatever you want to slot into that spot. And, you know, eventually someday there will be a magical jungler that will be kind of like their main role. Like, we'll get out Kwang someday. He'll come through and he'll be a character that wants to use Bombas, but, you know, maybe he's not a big strength guy. Want to make sure that you can get whatever stat that you need. Jungle Sis, Jungle Kepri, fire emoji.
Yes, and I guess I should call out that the 15 strength or 20 intelligence is on the starter, but the upgrades are 35 strength or 60 intelligence, depending on which stat is higher in your build.
Exactly.
Yeah, so there was the, but if you have no stats at the start, in Smite 2, you have enough gold to be able to buy a tier 1 item in addition to your starter. So if you buy an axe, then you'll have strength. If you buy a gem, you'll have intelligence. And that's kind of how the adaptiveness works there. The other question is, what happens if you have equal strength and intelligence? I don't know.
Great question. I want to say it defaults to strength. I could be wrong. But that is my understanding. I will reach out to AJ and see if he knows, because he's the one that set it up. So I assume that we have a backup just in case for that, you know, instance where you just buy a starter and a bunch of pots or something of that nature. So we want to make sure that even if you're not starting out with any other stat item, which, you know, is a possibility, you're still getting something for it.
Cool. All right. Well, that is the patch notes.
Phew.
There are a ton of bug fixes here, chat, and I could go through all of them, but we're like at 45 minutes past 1, and I want to make sure we have a lot of time for Q&A.
Yeah, I will say definitely like take the time to look through the bug fixes.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of actually really good bug fixes in here, and it should, you know, continue to improve the core base feel of the game. And we do read all of your bug
all your bug reports
that come in. Sometimes people are reporting things which are not bugs just because they want balance changes and whatnot. Please don't do that. Please just report bugs. But yeah, the bug report form is great. Please do fill that out.
Cool. All right, well, I'm going to bring us back to Cam's here again.
Yeah.
Chat, patch notes are live on SMITE2.com. Should be at the very top of the news page if you want to get into the nitty-gritty and all the details and read for yourself all those bug fixes and go over everything. But let's do some Q&A for a little bit, shall we? So, chat, what do you all want to talk about today? I'm sure you all have a lot of questions given all the balance that we just threw at your face.
Let's see. Any plans to revert Berserker Shield? We've definitely talked about it. The reason why we pulled the prots off the way that we did was to give it a little bit more specialization into a different niche. And I think a lot of people like to point out that it doesn't have permanent prots, but the thing is, with the way that we changed the passive, if you're sitting under 60%, you do have permanent prots. You get prots from the passive being under that threshold, and because the cooldown is the same as the buff duration, you're still continuously cycling through it. So again, you get that extra attack speed bump, which, by the way, 40% is a lot of attack speed. It's a lot of attack speed. We can still adjust the prots if we need to. We can adjust the cost. But I do think that it is a little bit disingenuous to say that it needs permanent prots when you can have it in some amounts.
Yeah. All right, let's...
I will say I've seen a couple people mention in chat today being able to set your cast type for your active items. I have no idea if that's a difficult thing or not, but I can ask the UI team after and see if that's
I know that was a pretty common Smite 1 request too, for having your relics on different cast
specifically
modes.
like away from the global type, like having a global, then an active, then each ability. I think that is definitely something that is important to a lot of people. I know, because like I'm the kind of person that's like, I'm down to adjust every single ability individually, because I just have the time to do that. But not everyone's thinking about that. You might load into a game where you're like, I want all my actives to be on instant, but oh crap, I didn't want Neath 1 to be on instant, and now it's on instant.
Yeah.
Oops, I have now missed my ability, and I got to go through my menu and change all that. So yeah, I definitely agree that could be a very helpful thing.
I've seen a couple people also ask this question since we did this with the jungle starters. You know, is there any chance that we go back and make some of the other starters adaptive power versus being fixed?
It's definitely not impossible. I think it would still make sense for some of them to stay only strength or only int or only whatever else. I do think that it is nice to be flexible, and it's always fun to be able to build different things in different places. We want to make sure, though, that we don't overlap in too many archetypes, right? Because, you know, bluestone is definitely a unique item, but now that you could buy bluestone or conduit, and if they also like swap through, it's kind of like they do kind of the same job as each other. And I think the other thing about it is that if you are making it super flexible like that, you can't really make one feel really strong.
Right,
you know what I mean? Because you have to account for everyone being able to get everything, which makes it a little bit more difficult to balance in between. So I would say not impossible. It does complicate the balance a little bit for some of these items, and we still want some of them to feel unique. So I would say probably not on every starter item, but maybe on a couple more.
Yeah. Let's see here. Can you make it so we can damage enemies in the stasis field? I believe that's intended, and I believe that would be ultra broken if you could.
If you could just like stun someone for 2 seconds and hit them the whole time.
Yeah.
Maybe a little
good.
broken.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit. I would say probably no on that one, but we are looking for ways to make stasis feel better. I would say that's probably a little bit too extreme and the feel better, but
yeah,
we're looking out for more ways.
Slightly disappointed in the amount of Scepter of Dominion game that
Need more
I
of
haven't
those.
seen in my game. I
Yeah,
want to
need
see that
more.
item because I think it's really cool. With the new items in store in Smite 2, will glyphs make a return or ever as their own items?
It's not impossible that they'd ever come back. I know a lot of people like having that extra stuff to buy at the end of the game, and we're still kind of working through like what is a cool new thing that we could do for those late game moments when you're like, I really need that like super powerful like punch to get through that late game blockade and really push to end. So I think that having more of those options is good. Will it be glyphs? Who's to say at this point? We are still looking for something in that general like ballpark of like what that mechanic entailed, but glyphs not 100% yet.
There's a question about, you know, will there ever be a starter or an item that steals mana? I would say, you know, never say never, but generally speaking, like stealing mana is it's an unfun thing to have happen to you, right? And there are some games really go deep in the embracing mana stealing as a play style, but I think that like generally speaking, it is fun to be able to push your buttons, and when you can't push your buttons, it is not fun. And it's a super strong thing that doesn't necessarily feel strong to you as a player, in the same way we've talked about like passive auras not really feeling strong. So it's like it's both not fun to play against, and it's like strong but doesn't feel strong. And so it's like probably not something that I think we would ever go down the path of, but maybe one day, you never know, right?
I saw a question that I want to bring up. Can you bring more upcoming gods into the game as playable in practice mode so we can help test for bugs and balance? So the idea is not on live servers, but we are doing flash tests now, or we're continuing to do flash tests, and we're going to be a lot more public with promoting when those are happening. I know before it was kind of you had to be in the Discord and kind of had to be there when it happened, but the idea is now that we've gone over all the gods in the first 50, we're going to be promoting flash tests. Flash tests, you can now stream them on Twitch or YouTube, make your content, and we definitely encourage people to hop in on those flash tests, try out the game, leave us your feedback, leave us your bug reports for sure.
Yeah, and there's different ways to approach this, right? Like for those of you who maybe played Paladins, like we had a test maps queue back in the day where it was like unarted, blocked out maps, you know, and I think that like it's good to get player feedback, but it's hard for casual players to understand why there's like this half-done, unbroken stuff in the game and when it's actually going to be done, right? Or what even the purpose of the testing is. Whereas like if you're the kind of player that opts into finding a PTS server, right? Like you're willing to like approach it with the right mentality of like, hey, this is probably going to be broken and I'm getting an early look at something in development. So it's just kind of like different player expectations when something's in the game, even if it's in the game for a time restricted queue or something. We've found that players don't react the same way as they do if you give it in a real test environment.
Are there any plans on updating the icons of the items in the store? Yes, eventually.
Eventually.
It's not our priority right now. You may see a couple pop in from time to time. We had some in progress over the past few months that are getting closer to being ready, but nothing super concrete right now in terms of when everything will be done, because that's a big process, right? Especially if we add more items or different kinds of items or change up things a little bit. We want to make sure that we're taking it step by step, a little bit at a time, and also making sure that we're keeping our God pipeline and other cool new features, in mind when we're doing those changes.
Yep.
I'm going to answer like 3 questions real quick because there's 3
Go
here
for
that
it.
I think I can answer pretty quickly.
Pause chat. There you go.
Are you going to start dropping updates on weekends instead of midweek? Probably not, because the majority of our team works during the week. So if something goes wrong, we are around to fix things. A lot of people are working on the weekends too, because we're trying to get a lot done right now, but we're not going to be shipping major updates to live on the weekend super often, especially if it has any chance of like breaking the game, because then people that maybe are at their kid's soccer game have to come in to fix it.
Yeah,
right?
another thing with that is we've got esports that run on the weekend
True.
as well, so we don't want to update mid-weekend, mid-tournament, and throw everything off on that side.
When do you guys expect to have stores/chests to players who want to get skins? Chests are still a ways out. That's new tech that we don't have, but we do want to start pricing things again in the store relatively soon, but we want to make sure that like we can put things on discount when we bring them back so that you can get them at a good price. And we don't have that tech either. So we're building out discounts. Once we get discounts, then you'll be able to buy things again. And then the last one I want to answer real quick is we had a long-time listener, first-time caller. Hey guys, really love these shows. First time catching one live. Was there any internal friction with sacrificing more foundational system changes for a faster God release timetable? Can we expect to see anything like that after we get over the January timeline? So I would say everybody on the team understood that the number one thing, the most important thing the game needed right now was it needed more gods. And I guess it's kind of the same but different, and it needed a faster pace of updates, right? And I think everybody here was bought into the idea that that is the most important thing for Smite 2 going forward, is to build up the roster so there's more diversity in gameplay, and to build the cadence to where you have faith that like we are working to make this game better and you're seeing changes regularly. I would say also, there's a lot of like more system stuff that we're still working on in the background that we haven't pushed live.
Yeah.
So maybe there's less of that than there would have been if we hadn't made all these gods, but I still think you're going to be impressed with some of the more foundational system stuff that does come out over time. And just even if you look through the bug changes and whatnot, there's been a lot of things that continue to improve. So that's my answer for that one. And then I will stop because I answered 3 questions in a row.
Yeah, I definitely want to plus one that in general, is that it is definitely not the most ideal. If we could work on everything, we'd work on everything, but there are things that take priority. And I think like as a long-time Smite player, like I'm still waiting for the day that Scylla gets in the game.
Right?
And that's how I feel, that I'm sure like you guys feel very similarly. So there are lots of things that we'd like to do. We just have to make sure that we're taking those resources and we're using them in ways that are going to be most effective to get the game rolling and make sure that everybody feels like they have a god they can play, they have a mode they can play, they have items they like to build, all of those good things.
I'm going to answer this other one too. Sorry. Can you make it easier to get diamonds or easier ascension passes? I definitely understand and appreciate the feedback. I think that if you look kind of across the industry, very few other games will ever give you their hard currency, right? Or they will give you a little bit as a new player and then they cut it off pretty quickly. To get you into the habit of spending money and then like stop, right? That's the psychology behind games that try and do that and exploit you. Like, it is extremely rare for a game to give you uncapped hard currency that you just will earn every week for the extent of your playing. You can say that like you would like us to give you more, but at the end of the day, we are a game that has to make money to pay for itself so that people can play it. So I don't think we have any intention of giving more diamonds. I think that there will be other ways to get ascension passes in the future through systems that we build out. Maybe there'll be an ascension pass in your battle pass track or something like that, right? Not that we're going to have an exact battle pass track, but I'm just saying, systems can interact that way. But in terms of giving out more diamonds, I don't think that we could afford to give out more diamonds than we're giving out, plus, all the legacy gems and whatnot that people are getting.
And I know the team is still looking into, the ability to do like bonus worshiper weekends
Yes.
to help
Yes.
level up those ascension passes
Woo-hoo,
faster,
baby.
which will in turn get you to diamond rewards faster.
Yes.
Yeah, I am very excited for that.
Yeah.
To say the least.
Larry's like, I got to get my radiant grind.
Yeah, listen, you tell me the second it's ready,
Yep.
and I will be there.
There's a question. The God's insanely fast release schedule has been amazing. After the first 50, I'm worried you will slow down too much. Don't worry. We're still going to be moving very fast. We aren't going to be dropping, 6 in 4 weeks or whatever the hell we're doing, here for this time period. But we're still going to be, an extremely aggressive God cadence. Plus, we're going to be mixing in new gods a lot more regularly.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give you the exact numbers right now because I think it's too far out, and I don't want you to be thinking past the 50, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
there's
let's get
still
to
a
the
lot
50.
to come.
But we are planning a very aggressive God cadence after that, so I would not worry.
Okay, I have kind of an archetype of questions that I can answer real quick
Cool.
here. Will there be any healing-based items? Any anti-shield-based items? Any anti-stealth-based items? In general, we're kind of waiting for more of those niches to show up to really feel like it's worthwhile to include some of those items. We don't want items to be just so niche that they never get bought. They're useful against 1 or 2 gods, and that's kind of it. I think especially for, particular character matchups, it can be really important. And I think, specifically for shielding, it might hit more of a critical mass like around when Geb comes
Right,
out.
yeah.
Hype for that, by the way.
know.
That's going to be so exciting. Maybe some more invis when someone like Ao Kwang eventually rolls up and he's got that himself. I just think that we need to kind of wait for those better, kind of breakpoints to say, okay, there's 5. I'm just saying 5, by the way. 5 is not the actual breakpoint number. Just use it as an example. Please don't take this out of context. There's 5 gods that have stealth now. We can have an item. That's just kind of something that we are going to continually evaluate and see how useful would this be with these characters, or this item that does this, or these kind of interactions. And do we need this kind of space to be filled in the item shop?
This is just a purely technical question. Because we do have some anti-shielding tech on Yemoja, could we take that and plug it into an existing item relatively easily? Not adding a new item, but
That's
just
a great question.
because and somebody was talking about I can't remember what it's called, Screeching Gargoyle. Maybe that could be an anti-shield item.
I had it on my notes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just curious is that tech portable between a god and item, or do we have to re-implement it differently or something?
That I do not know,
Okay.
actually. I'd have to probably talk to Clumsy or the engineer that worked through Yemoja, because that is definitely something that, those items do. In terms of actual damage to shields versus reduced shielding effect, they're different. Because dealing damage specifically to a shield, I think we fixed a lot of that, especially with Nemesis coming out. And, that was a fun adventure
yes.
of figuring out how do I actually take the damage that I take from the shield when I'm not actually taking damage. Oh, it's because we just didn't have the tech yet to actually register how much damage we are taking from shields, to use that number then put it into the reflect and the heal.
Right.
And anyway, I worked on Nemesis. That was a lot of that. But essentially reducing a shield versus reducing future shields are 2 different effects, and Yemoja does one of them. So it's very possible that, they want one effect more than the other. So we need to kind of, identify how easy is it to port this system? Is this system actually what players want? Do we need to modify this in any way? And then we have to then account that into how much work is that going to be in terms of the rest of the, pipeline that we're working with. Does this slot into CA7, 8, 9, wherever we need to put it to make those things work. So it's a little bit more complicated than just move this here. But I wish it was that easy. If we could just do that, then I would do it today. But yeah, it's a little bit more complicated, unfortunately.
Let's see here. I saw somebody asking any plans on new relics.
It's really tough because we've hit a lot of niches right now. And since you can only have one relic, we don't want there to be too many choices.
Exactly.
Because then you kind of get paralyzed by choice. I mean, even right now, as a backliner, I'm kind of well, do I want beads? Do I want Aegis? Do I want Shell? Do I want Blink? Then I'm I don't really care about a Sunder. But if I'm playing ADC and I have to get Sunder, there's a problem.
Right.
My team's not securing things. I'll do it myself. Type of deal. But I think that it is not impossible for the future. But at this current moment, we're still trying to address like what even makes a good relic. What is
Yeah.
worthy of sitting in that relic spot, because you can only have one of those and you can't change it. So it needs to be something really,
gotta be
really
special,
good.
you know?
It's got to be special, yeah.
I will say the one relic that's come up internally over the past couple of weeks has been meditate, only because we're talking about assault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is assault going to be assault if we don't have meditate as a relic? Like, will it work and feel the same?
Yeah.
Everyone's just going to be buying, I'm going to need a charm first item.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? Like, you have the mushroom now. So do you need
that's actually a
double
really good
meditate
point.
plus mushroom? So like there's a interesting questions that we have internally around this kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. Definitely something to think about. Maybe we could even see like game mode exclusive relics in the future.
Yeah.
Oh,
but
that's a good point.
not impossible that certain specific things are for the future to discuss. I think, especially is the game plan there.
Cool. All right. Well, we are at 2:05, so one more question.
Woo,
Let's
one more
do
question.
it. Woo, one more question.
I'm gonna answer maybe not the best question, but I will answer the question. This person says, "Will Izanami have her nurse skin released tomorrow?" No, but I think it gives me a good place to talk about. This sprint to get to 50 gods has led to us stopping work basically on all skins, right? So if there is not a skin that you see in game in Smite 2 right now, probably won't be coming before January, because all of our resources have been going towards bringing gods over. One thing that we have been talking about doing, though, probably not in this next patch, but hopefully in January or something, we know that people are owed a lot of skins, right? There's a lot of like Divine Legacy skins and cross-gen skins, which we will be bringing over, but we just couldn't work on right now because we thought getting gods over more quickly was the better move, right? So we're talking about putting in the same way that we have this like Cupid comes out this date, putting in like this skin will be in game,
X date.
on X date kind of thing, so that if you go in, you can see when you will get the things that you are owed. So I know that it's annoying to have spent money on something or to have unlocked something that you can't access right now in Smite 2. We are actually, we did just sign a couple of like people to help work with porting over some of the skins. So we are actually starting that pipeline back up again a little bit. But yeah, I understand the feeling. We're trying to make it more obvious when the stuff will be coming over, and it's in development. Yeah.
Let me find my question.
Let's see.
You got one, Lermy?
Let's see. Really love active items, and I wish I felt like I could build them more often. Is there any interest in balancing at least one active item to be very central to each build archetype? That's the goal. We would love to see every role be able to partake in the new, exciting features Smite 2 being active items. So, again, we're a little bit limited in making new ones, but we will try to continue to balance more of those active items to be a little bit more central. Of course, we don't want them to be essential, right? Because, again, we have a lot of players that don't want to build active items. We have players that, have a little bit more challenges in getting used to the system. And if we make them essential, you must buy Dagger Frenzy to be a good ADC, then it's like, maybe I just don't play ADC. And we don't want people to feel like that. We want people to feel like they can play any role and not have to worry too much about it. But again, we want there to be some exciting skill testing stuff in the game. We want you to be able to say, I used my active item so crazy there. I went off with that, Pendulum Blade, and I got that 3-second cooldown off, and I double shielded, or I did this twice and I went crazy. We want those things to still happen, those moments to be exciting and rewarding, but we don't want them to be completely core to builds.
Cool. All right, I'm going to take this last one. I see 3 people copy pasting the same thing about potential for a god that affects your player on a meta level, similar to how Kleena, Defins, Rob lines. Could there be a character that could affect your player in terms of messing with your UI or things like that?
I mean, like, kind of Cthulhu was supposed to be doing some of that, right? Like, there's the fake sound effects that play. There's the
madness tentacles that float in the 3D space. Yeah.
So I think it's theoretically possible. I will say, like, things that interact with your UI are much more difficult to implement than things that only work in the game space. And I think it would be hard to do it in a way where people know that it's an intended thing and not like the game's just breaking, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just trying to think.
Imagine you're a new player and you get hit with something that swaps your UI, and you're just like, what?
Like,
Yeah.
what the hell? This game's broken, right? It's like, like you'd almost have to add like, I don't know, like some kind of effect to the UI so that you know that it's been hacked or whatever, you know. I don't know, maybe, but I would say we don't have any gods on the calendar right now that are planning to do that, but it's theoretically possible. I mean, it's easier to do in UE5 than it would have been in UE3.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had like some crazy god brainstorms in the past, and I mean, like, I'm talking a while ago at this point, but like even in some of those brainstorms, we've been like, well, this god, you know, is a little bit like a little sneaky, a little trickster, a little bit, and like it has some of those mentalities of like, what can we do to like implement that vibe into it a little bit. So I think like and even this was like years ago, I forget who this was for, maybe it was Charybdis or something, where it was like, she's like this little like trickster girl who's trying to like beat you up and like claw
throw
through,
knives at you.
Yeah, throw knives at you. And so we were like, well, what if she does like this sort of like trickstery thing and like she disappears on the ground? That is kind of what happened. But beyond that, there are things like hiding health bars, switching up, you know, does your teammate look like your team or is it looking like it's the enemy? Things of that nature. But those are all, again, kind of isolated to the game world. And so we've had those ideas. It just comes down to is implementing that level of tech feasible? How much extra bandwidth does that take to actually build out those systems, and can we reuse this in a meaningful way so that we can like kind of knock out two birds with one stone and say we can use it here and we can use it here, and you know, say like this is double worth it for that purpose. So finding a lot of ways to use tech multiple times is a big reason why we've chosen to do gods in the order that we're doing them as well, which I know has been a little bit hard to understand a bit, because you know the tech is really obvious to us, not so obvious to you guys, but that is another big reason why the gods are coming in the order that they're coming.
All right, well, I think we can call it a wrap on this edition of Titan Talk. It's been a good one.
So tomorrow,
Closed Alpha 6.
Hopefully, Closed Alpha 6 will be live, so you'll be able to hop in and play all this. New gods, new balance, lots of fun stuff. And then, you know, we will just keep on patching from there. And we put out the dates for, you know, the first 50-ish gods, so check that out. And
really exciting.
It's exciting.
Exciting.
I know, right? Patch notes are live again on SMITE2.com, so if you're just now tuning in.
We forgot to ask Max about 3-man ranked. We should ask him about that stuff.
Dang it. We should ask Max about that again.
Yes.
I apologize to the person who chatted.
Sorry, chat.
Yeah. But yes, patch notes are live on the site. You can read over them. Closed Alpha 6 tomorrow, some point. Keep an eye on our official social media channels for all that good stuff. But until then, we will see you all on the battleground. Hope you all have a great rest of the day. Take it easy.
Bye.
Peace.
Bye.